Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very empowering show coming right up with special guest Tom Bunn, and he's here today to share with us his new book, Panic Free, the 10-day program to end panic, anxiety, and claustrophobia. Now, Tom's book is the result of his many years addressing flight panic in his role as an airline pilot. He's also a licensed therapist, regular contributor to Psychology Today, and former U.S. Air Force captain who flew the Air Force's first supersonic fighter jet, the F-100. So let's welcome to the show, Tom Bunn.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Marianne.
What a pleasure it is to have you here, and of course to talk about your new book. My goodness, I'm sure you've got to be so excited as an author because it's getting such great reviews.
Yeah, it's very satisfying. But the really satisfying thing is to be able to develop something that's really effective, because the methods that have been around for some time to deal with panic haven't been very good. Back when we had a course at Pan Am on fear of flying, we would take people on the graduation flight. They'd be doing the breathing exercises we taught them, sitting there breathing and having a panic attack at the same time. And then shortly thereafter, I tried using cognitive behavioral therapy, tried that for years. The problem is that it's cognitive. And when you have a panic attack, you get overstressed, you got no cognition available to do cognitive with. So it became clear that if anything's going to stop panic, it's got to work automatically, because as one client said, if you ask my name in the middle of a panic attack, I couldn't tell you. So what we do is train a part of the brain that first responders use, people who do very high stress jobs like firemen, policemen, people who work in emergency rooms. You see, when you're really stressed, your cognitive part of your brain doesn't work very well. You might have noticed that when you get really stressed.
I have.
Anyway, so what we do is in those situations, and what we're doing also, in those situations, they know what kind of emergencies you're going to run into. So they develop a protocol for each type of problem and subdivide it into the various subtypes of problems. And they train you step by step by step, hands-on. Here's step A, step B, step C. And you do it repeatedly until you build it in. And once you build it in, you can use that part of the brain to just carry out those tasks as if on autopilot, because that part of the brain isn't bothered by stress hormones.
So, working with people that go through these really stressful situations, and of course your background, as a pilot and all these great things that you've done, is this why you decided this was the right time to write this book?
Well, actually, I have been stopping panic successfully with my clients in fear of flying for, I don't know, maybe 15 years. And I didn't realize that, if you read what you come up with online and other places, they refer to cognitive behavioral therapy as the gold standard for treatment of panic on the ground. So I just assumed it was working I knew it didn't work in the air, but I was assuming it did work on the ground. But when I looked at the research, they'll say it's 50% effective because people respond. Well, that respond means to get a little better. But actually only one person in 6 is able to get relief from panic, become panic free by using CBT.
That's
so. So I figured, wait a minute, we're running between 80 and 100%, depending on how much time a person wants to work on it in the air, and that's a very difficult situation. So how come we should have better the results than that on the ground? So that's why I wrote the book, because there's just no reason for people to have to put up with panic because therapists haven't figured out how to fix it.
Yeah, I have a better way to address it. Well, and you're the expert, so maybe you can share with us a little bit. Does it seem like more people are having panic attacks now than before?
I don't know that the stats just sort of give you the idea that about a third of the public, if you really ask people, you'll find that almost everybody has it. Sometimes had a panic attack, but people who have trouble with it routinely, maybe about one person out of three.
Mm-hmm.
So it's out there. And what happens in panic is you believe you're in danger and you believe that you're stuck. You believe you're trapped and can't escape. Elevators even though they're safe, people have panic attacks in elevators.
Mm. It seems like we've got such a high stress, society that either it's being discussed more or just, as you're saying, people have it, but they're dealing with it. Are there other ways that are being being used to address this, like medication?
Well, yeah, you can use medication, but that's really problematic. The meds that are used for dealing with panic and anxiety, benzodiazepines, they're very controversial. Some psychiatrists will not prescribe them at all, and they're only supposed to be prescribed for temporarily. But that's not going to work for panic. You got to be taking it continuously. And the other thing is, you have to take a pretty massive dose of it to be free of panic. And so it's a very controversial drug because it's very addictive, and it's also strongly linked to in combination with other drugs causing overdoses.
Mm. Well, in your book, you talk about imagined danger. What is that, and how does that relate with panic attacks?
Well, one of the common ways people have a panic attack is they have some stress hormones released, and they notice their heart rate is higher than usual, or maybe feel pounding heart. And the thought is, you could think, well, wonder what that's all about. And you could say, well, okay, I'm just stressed. But you could also say, what if I'm having a heart attack? That what if, you can't answer it because you could be, So when you start saying, what if I'm having a heart attack, that's going to produce some stress hormones and cause your heart to beat more. And then you say, oh my goodness, I must be having a heart attack. So if you start believing what you're imagining, you're in trouble, because if you are in a life-threatening situation, what you want to do is to escape, and you can't escape your own body. So this is where many cases of people with panic attacks end up in an emergency room, which is probably a good thing because it could be a heart attack, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in most cases, you'll find the doctor say, well, you're having panic attacks. And then they suggest you see a therapist. And what therapists will generally be successful in doing is saying, look, it's not going to kill you. Panic isn't going to kill you. But if you ask somebody who has a panic attack if that's going to satisfy them, they're going to say, somebody who tells you it won't kill you is not going to give you the satisfaction you want because it's an awful experience.
Yeah, it's interesting because you hear of people who maybe develop this with like speech fright, and it's one of the
Mm-hmm.
things they call, and so there are different levels, maybe swimming. So, how does a person get to this place where they're feeling like they're, that their body's doing this? And you kind of explained it a little bit, but I'd love for you to go a little bit more into that. And how can they bring
Okay. Yeah.
themselves to a place where they're realizing, like how you're saying, it's not going to kill you. Yeah, getting in front of like a thousand
Yeah.
people and
Yeah.
talking, that's not the end.
Yeah, it may not kill you, but you feel like you're going to die when you're having a panic attack.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, it's going to be a little complex, but here's the deal. We have, in your house, you have a thermostat on the wall, and it regulates the temperature, and it does it automatically. Now, literally, we have what's called the autonomic nervous system, first four letters, AUTO. This is the system that regulates us, and the name tells us it should work automatically. Now, for about 60% of us, it does. It regulates us, and we don't have panic attacks. But for about 40% of us, the upregulation system works okay. We can get really upset and revved up. But the downregulation, the calming system, didn't get developed well enough. You see, at birth, we all have an ability to get revved up, but not an ability to calm down. It takes a year and a half, at least, for a child to develop what we could call mental software to automatically operate the calming system. And so that automatic operation, if it doesn't develop, then what people try to do is to manually deal with things. That is, hey, if I can't calm myself down, I got to make sure I don't get upset. So they become control freaks. You have to control everything. And then when you find you can't control everything, then you have anxiety. And when the anxiety develops into something you think is life-threatening, then and you can't escape it, there's your panic.
Mm-hmm. And it kind of develops from there. And so that's really how it's all triggered.
Yeah, it's really triggered by inadequate development of the calming system. And I think it's kind of like this. For the first year and a half of life, when you get upset, someone's going to calm you down. And the way a caregiver, usually mom, calms the baby is with her face and the quality of her voice, and then touch, of being held until you completely calm down. That's the key. And research that just came out today says that if a child is calmed 50% of the time, that's good enough. If the calming is completely thorough. But if the calming is less than that, then the child may not develop the internal software that will let their calming system work. You see, because it's expectation of relief that will cause the child to calm down on their own. In other words, if the child is crying and mom comes in and calms you, and this happens consistently enough, then you can be upset. Mom's not present, but you expect, well, if I start to cry, she's going to come here. And then imagining her arrival, imagining her face, imagining her touch, that can activate the calming system. And so when the child has developed the ability that their expectation will activate the calming, then you're home free. Then you have your automatic regulation taking care of you. And like I say, about 60% of us have that. About 40% of us don't.
That's a huge percentage of people who haven't learned those life skills.
Yeah, and it's not like an intellectual skill. It's just that you have to, when upset, expect mom is going to be here in a minute, and picturing her arrival, picturing her face, imagining her voice, and imagining being held. That imagination activates the calming system. The calming system doesn't realize whether it's really happening or imagined, and the imagination will do the job. So if the mother does reinforce it half the time and show up, that's good enough for the child to build in the program.
Now, let's say someone didn't really grow up with the best of parents. Maybe they were ill-equipped as well. So using this your imagination and bringing yourself to that place may or may not work for people.
Yeah, well, I tell you, like I said, this research just came out today, and I was shocked by one thing I found in the research. They said if the mother growls at the child, yells at the child, or frightens the child one time, it blows the whole parenting. All it takes is one time that you really frighten the child thoroughly, and the child is not going to be securely attached. And without a secure attachment, you're not going to develop an ability to regulate emotion. No, I mean, I'm seriously, I was just shocked at that. The idea that all it takes is one time when the parent loses it and does something that frightens the child, such as yelling or growling. That's all it takes to stop the child from developing the ability to self-regulate.
Yeah, it's so important for people to know, because you have these children and they're at these ages where there's so much development that's going on. And I don't think a lot of times people realize how much of that is so important.
Well, yeah, the research is interesting because, first of all, it said you don't have to be perfect in terms of always responding. If you respond half the time, that's good enough. But don't ever lose it and frighten the child, because No matter how much you've done positively, if you lose it once, the child's not going to be secure.
No, that makes perfect sense.
I got to tell you, it makes sense maybe, but it shocks me to think that, geez, it's really a lot to expect that a parent's never going to lose it and frighten the child.
Mm.
But I guess that explains why there's so much panic out.
Well, and why your book is helping so many people, because maybe their parents didn't really equip them, and kind of going up the grandparents didn't have any idea, and so it kind of goes up the food chain that way.
Well, yeah, that's really what it comes down to, because here as an adult, if you didn't get the good enough situation as a child, you can pick up the development now. So what do you look for? You look for a person who is an adult, a friend, who, when you're with them, they are sending you signals unconsciously from their face and their voice and their touch or body language that let you know you're totally safe with them physically and you're totally safe with them emotionally. Those signals, which come across completely unconsciously, activate the calming system. So what we do is, in the exercises in the book, we go to that. Say, okay, imagine you're with a person who you feel totally, both physically and emotionally safe with. Now, maybe nobody's that way all the time, but you go to a time when it was emotionally safe with them. And then you want to take the challenging moments, such as going to an MRI or going to an elevator or a bridge or tunnel or whatever it is that, that triggers you. And you take that challenging experience and you break it down into bits and pieces, such as if it was an MRI, just calling to make an appointment for an MRI. And then the second picture you would hold by your friend's face would be going to the place, and the next checking in, and then putting on a robe, and then getting into the machine, things like that. So you imagine your friend is holding that picture of the challenging situation piece by piece by their face. The safety signals in their face get embedded in the picture, which is a picture of the challenging situation. Then you want to link their voice to it. So you imagine you have a conversation about the photograph, looking at it together. And then as you're having the conversation, you imagine your friend then puts their arm around your waist and gives you a hug. And so you see, this goes back to the research, like I said, just came out today. You need to end the calming with a hug or touch. What they mentioned in terms of infants, chest to chest contact until the child is completely calm. So if we build this in as an adult by practicing it a few times, then just as we talked about how the imagination of the mother coming to take care of you will calm you, building in this imagination of your friend being calming can take care of you when you're in the challenging situation automatically.
Well, and it seems that it is a very simple process for people.
It actually is, yeah. And I tell you how simple it is. We're talking about situations you can link to, but your listeners could do this, and it's very simple. Remember now, what activates your calming system? Face, voice, and touch of a person who you feel physically safe with and emotionally safe with. So, first of all, get that person in mind. And for the next few days, every time you feel alarmed or alerted or something, when you get zapped with stress hormones about something, before you do anything else, imagine your friend just walked into the room and says hello to you and comes over and gives you a hug. Do you see what's happening? Mm-hmm. Arousal is going to cause the three things that will calm you. You just train yourself that every time I get aroused, I see my friend's face, I hear their voice, I feel their touch. And in just a few days, you can train yourself to automatically calm down every time you get revved up.
Oh, how powerful is that? Because, I could imagine in the middle of a panic attack, it's kind of really difficult to get to a place of calm.
Yeah. So when you set this up by practicing it, just like we're talking right now, when you're just hanging around and have some time to practice the exercise, it doesn't take very much time to practice it when you get stressed up during the day. But you can also do the other exercises linking this up. both to arousal and to situations. It just takes a few days. And then you train your mind to take care of you automatically. And as you said, in panic, you can't then say, okay, now I need to figure what do I need to do. It's too late. You got to practice it ahead of time so it kicks in automatically.
Now, is that what you do with, I understand you have a course for people who are afraid of flying?
Yeah, we do two things. But first, we want to make sure that they understand intellectually that flying is okay. So we go through all the the things that make flying safe, such as the training and the backup systems and the warning systems and air traffic control and the backups for air traffic control making a mistake. It's so controlled. And if you realize how controlled it is, you'll become satisfied intellectually that it's okay. That doesn't necessarily change how it feels for you to be on an airplane and not in control and not able to escape. Because if you don't have that automatic regulation built in, you want to be in control and you want to be able to escape, and being on a plane doesn't sit well. So what we do is, in addition to the intellectual information, run them through what we call the strengthening exercise. It strengthens them emotionally. And we have a couple of dozen black and white snapshots that show the entire experience from showing up at the airport to finishing your flight and everything in between. So what we want to do is to link everything you're going to run into on your flight to the face, voice, and touch of your calming person. That's the calming side of it. Now, there's also something we do in addition if we can identify a situation that's troublesome, and that is link the things you're going to run into to a memory when you produced a hormone called oxytocin. When you produce oxytocin, you can't produce stress hormones. For example, when a mother nurses a child, that's a situation that produces oxytocin. So all the time she's nursing, oxytocin is produced to keep her from getting anxious that she should be doing something else. If she got anxious and stopped nursing, then the child wouldn't get its needs met. Mm-hmm. Oxytocin also is produced to cause bonding. So when you hold a newborn child for the first time, oxytocin is released to make you feel protective of the child. It's also released in sexual afterglow so that the two people have a tendency to bond. Nature figured it out that if a child is born as the result of this activity, it's a good thing if there's two parents rather than one to take care of the child. Also, as you probably know, when we interact with animals, we produce oxytocin that makes us feel calm.
Well, it's interesting just how when you look at the science of it, and your book really kind of outlines for people the different steps that they can take to get to a place where eventually they're panic-free.
Mm-hmm. And it's not hard to do. And frankly, this isn't brain science in a way. I mean, it's not like you have to be a brilliant scientist to do this stuff. I actually just stumbled on this, and then I knew it was working, but we didn't know why until some of the research showed oxytocin plays a role in one way, and the parasympathetic nervous system being activated plays a role in another way. Oxytocin shuts down the fear system. Face, voice, and touch of a friend who's calming overrides any stress hormones that you have. By the way, Stephen Porges, the guy who discovered how the parasympathetic nervous system is activated, he refers to this calming as vagal braking. The nerve that's involved in the calming is the vagus nerve. It goes to the heart, goes to the lungs, goes to the gut. And when it's activated, it just tells your whole insides to just calm down, everything's fine. And he calls it vagal braking because when the vagus nerve is activated, it slows the heart dramatically. And he likens it to being in a car with an automatic transmission. You put your foot on the brake. You can pump on the gas if you want to. The car's not going to go anywhere. In a car, the brake will override the gas pedal. The same thing's true with us if we just learn how to activate that brake pedal. And that's face, voice, and touch of a person who is emotionally safe to be with, as well as physically safe to be with.
Have you ever had someone say, I've had panic attacks my entire life. There's no
Hmm.
way a 10-day program's going to fix me.
Yeah, well, I've been hearing it mostly from people I've worked with for years because I've been doing fear of flying work since 1980. And even, every week we have a chat. Last night we had our weekly chat and for an hour online. And there's always people who are in the course who just can't believe that this is going to work. Always. I think it's really rare that I have a client who has confidence that when they get on the plane they're going to be okay, because you can't test it ahead of time. So what I do is, in a therapy session with them, I make sure that they do have good things to link to, and if I know they've got good things to link to, I can promise them they're going to be okay. That helps them get on the plane. But for example, this morning at about 8 o'clock, the phone rang and someone was at the New York airport, and she said, "I'm really having a meltdown." So we talked for a while, and she's okay. She got on the plane. So yes, it is hard to believe it'll work, and after you've taken a flight or two and it works, then you begin to believe, but you still might think, yeah, but what about the next flight? After maybe 5, 6 flights, you recognize it's going to work every time.
Well, you've been doing this work for some time and working with people in regards to fear of flying. So you really have some really great stats in regards to people moving beyond that.
Yeah, and you were saying at the beginning about the satisfaction of having a book out, but really there's just a major satisfaction of being able to do something, and particularly something so simple that can really change a person's life and open up the whole world to them if they're flying, and open up a lot more of the world to them if they've restricted it because of panic attacks.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much that can be gained by reading your book, Panic Free. I felt it was such a great resource. Gosh, Tom, where can people connect with you and learn more about the work that you're doing and of course, your book?
Well, for flying, it's easy enough, I think. Our website is fearofflying.com.
Hmm.
And for the book, panicfree.net. Or if you can just remember that what you want to do is be panic free and type that in at Google, probably best thing would be Amazon or Barnes and Noble. The book will pop up, and it's also available as in Kindle or as an audio book.
Hmm. Well, you've got such great resources where people get some questions answered and they can connect with you. So, either website, it's fabulous for people to start making those changes in their life. Tom, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Marianne, thank you so much, because getting the word out, that's so important, because so many people believe nothing will work.
Well, this will change everything.
Yes. Okay.
Well, thank you, Tom. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you, and of course, to talk about your new book, Panic Free, the 10-day program to end panic, anxiety, and claustrophobia. Again, if you'd like to connect with Tom and learn more about his book, you can at panicfree.net. The book's available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie retailers. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.